And now our fourth story out front. More questions for Susan Rice. For the second day in a row, she and the president, who is the possible pick by the president for Secretary of State, met with Republican senators, some of whom obviously have sharply criticized her description of the attack on the American consulate in Benghazi. But one Republican whose support Rice desperately needed, the moderate, influential Susan Collins, was not impressed.
I still have many questions that remain unanswered. I continue to be troubled by the fact that the UN ambassador decided to play what was essentially a political role at the height of a contentious presidential election campaign.
Yet the president continues to stand by Susan Rice.
Susan Rice is extraordinary. Couldn't be prouder of the job that she's done at USUN.
Out front tonight, Ryan Salam, writer for the National Review, and Tim Punk, Democratic strategist. All right, Tim, when you hear Senator Collins, who, you know, she is influential, she is moderate, come out and say, look, I'm not satisfied, sort of turning her back on Susan Rice, she had that moment in front of the microphone to endorse. She did not. Should the administration cut its losses and just say, this might not be the right nominee? Yes, the president thinks she's extraordinary, but maybe not for Secretary of State?
Oh, I don't think so at all. I think the president won the election, and I think the American people expect him to not only stand up for the ideas that he campaigned on, but also to stand up for the people who work hard for him every day. And, you know, with respect to Susan Collins' comments, I think a couple of things there. First of all, she's obviously very influential, and her support is important. But one of the things that she did say is that she wouldn't necessarily support her colleagues in blocking Ambassador Rice. The other thing that she said that I guess I'd have to take a little bit of exception with is that these comments were political. I think it's important that, you know, we have to look at this. Every comment 1 month before an election is political. We do have to give administration officials the space to do their jobs. And in this case, Ambassador Rice was doing her job in talking about the attacks.
All right, let me ask you, Ryan, about something that Tim just said, though. She said that Senator Collins did not come out and actually say, I'm going to block Susan Rice's nomination. She did, though, go ahead to say she thought John Kerry would be an excellent appointment and would be easily confirmed. So tell us why that might not quite be what Republicans think it is.
Well, one issue is that if Senator John Kerry becomes Secretary of State John Kerry, then suddenly there's a special election in Massachusetts. And I think that there are a lot of folks who are thinking about that as a potential opportunity for Republicans. So I think that probably...
Scott Brown, who's still popular.
Scott Brown, very popular. And I think that that's certainly one angle. But I think that there's also a deeper issue here, which is this. You know, conservatives also have policy priorities. And one thing that you've noticed is that while Senator Collins has gone in one direction criticizing Susan Rice, you also have Senator McCain and Senator Lindsey Graham who are backing away from some of their sharper criticisms of Susan Rice. And these are folks who are very committed to a very forward-leaning American foreign policy. And I suspect that there are also people who are skeptical that Senator Kerry shares that vision, and they might think
You're
that
saying
Susan
he's
Rice,
more dovish than Susan Rice.
Exactly, and they might think that Susan Rice is a little bit more hawkish, a little bit more open to a forward-leaning foreign policy. So a lot of folks, including Bill Kristol of the Weekly Standard, who really care about that issue are saying, wait a second, Republicans, Susan Rice might actually be a better pick from the perspective of U.S. foreign policy than John Kerry.
Tim, we also heard from Senator Bob Corker on this issue, and he's been very outspoken on Benghazi on this show and others. He's in line to become the senior Republican on the Foreign Relations Committee. Now, he was very careful, and he's been careful with us to not say he's for or against Susan Rice, but he did have a warning for the president, and here he is.
I would just ask that the president step back away from all the buzz around this particular situation and take a deep breath and decide who is the best Secretary of State for our country at this time when we have so many issues to deal with.
Now, I don't know whether that was a veiled reference to pick someone else or not, but the question, Tim, is, does the administration need to have a fight about this right now?
Well, look, I think Senator Corker was exactly right that the president should step back from the buzz and pick exactly who he wants. But I also think there's a more important issue here, which is they should be focusing on different things on Benghazi, and I think they are. And that is, one, let's make sure we bring those who are responsible for the Benghazi attacks to justice. And two, let's make sure that something like this never happens again. But again, I think the president, having won the election, is going to pick the person who he thinks is going to do the best job, regardless of the politics, regardless of a Massachusetts special election. He's going to pick the best person.
Ryan, can Republicans block the nomination of Susan Rice? She is a very accomplished diplomat, as you've said, by all those measures. She's also a woman. She's also African American. A lot of people think she did absolutely nothing wrong. She's come out and made her case. How do they block it?
I think it's very tricky. Certainly they can try to sustain a filibuster, but I think you're going to see people defect from that. That's one piece of it. Another piece of it is this regarding what Tim had said a moment ago. I think that actually it makes sense for President Obama to pick a fight on behalf of Susan Rice, in part because it demonstrates to his base that he's not going to roll over and play dead. And I think that that's part of what Senator Corker might have been trying to get across. You might want to do this to make a point, but then, is that necessarily the best thing to do? Yada, yada. I think that that's a deeper question, because I think that President Obama is in the mood to flex some of his muscles because he did win a convincing victory. So I think that that's part of what's going on here as well.
Well, maybe if he fakes a fight over Susan Rice, he'll compromise on the fiscal cliff. Who knows?
It's a very interesting point you raise.
Who knows? He's a smart man. He's got a lot of thoughts going on in his head. Thanks very much to Ryan and Tim. Appreciate both your time.